Off top, Paul Robeson, man. Damn. It's incredible. He was, first of all, son of a man who escaped from slavery. Then Paul Robeson went on to get an academic scholarship to Rutgers University and be the valedictorian while being All-American 2 times, then played in NFL while going to law school at Columbia. He didn't get a JD. He was going to undergrad law, but then went on to be a renowned actor and singer. Damn, he's perfect. Play the music.
This is the Domonique Foxworth Show.
All right, welcome to the Domonique Foxworth Show. We'll do more than just think about how Paul Robeson might be the ideal human being and how we never could live up to his greatness. He also fought against the country and all the racism and xenophobia that took place. What an incredible man. If you can't tell, I found myself reading history books this weekend. But anyway, that's not fun. You know what's fun? Getting bros paid. And here to talk about the next bro getting paid is the great Bill Barnwell. And of course, Charlie's here.
I'm not good at anything, so I'm glad you didn't add great before it. I'm like slightly above average at a lot of things.
Nah, you're great.
I think we can all agree Charlie is going to get paid more than either of us in the long run. Just on sheer charm.
Yeah.
Just boyish
Charlie is
charm.
So charming. Gotta sidle up to some rich sugar daddy. Good luck, Charlie.
I love sugar.
and you love daddies.
People don't appreciate how funny that is.
So it works out perfectly for both of us.
Speaking of rich sugar daddy, should we talk about Jerry Jones and the pickle the Cowboys are in? All right, here's the situation, guys. The Cowboys have been an excellent football team for, I don't know, a decade or so. From the entire Dak era, they've been very good, but they haven't gotten over the hump. They've won 12 games a year the last 3 seasons, while Dak Prescott came back from this ankle injury and played some of the best football of his career last year. They also need to pay Dak Prescott, who's going to want roughly $60 million, CeeDee Lamb, who's going to, let's just say, a Justin Jefferson-esque deal, Micah Parsons, who's going to want, say, a Bosa-like deal. That puts them in a predicament of how to make their roster better. Jerry Jones is old. He wants to win. The first piece of that will be the quarterback, which, I don't know if you know about this, Bill Barnwell wrote an excellent article about Dak's contract situation, which you should read after Bill sells you on why you should read it, even more with this conversation. But how should the Cowboys handle Dak's contract moving forward?
I think we got to start with Bill, but I saw him make a face. We're not going to quibble over adjectives. He didn't like your face. He didn't like excellent. But other than that, Bill, fill us in.
That's what I bring to the show is I make a face
words.
When someone says a word that I don't like. That's like 89% of what I add to the show. I can't, this is like if you weren't allowed to talk about how many times you get dapped up at sporting events on the show. Like, that's not fair. You're putting, I have one hand going behind my back because I can't be myself on the show anymore.
I'm sorry. You are free to reference whatever you want, and I'll have you know, I went to an Orioles game. A lot of handshakes. A lot of straight up handshakes for me. A lot of straight up shake them out.
I'm not surprised. I'm sure you got straight handshakes. I'm sure you got daps. I'm sure you got love from all kinds of people at the Orioles game. No question to me. That's what you do best.
Don't tell nobody. I got a couple hugs too. We got a different type of fan base. The show is growing. A couple young hugs, and I was like, hey, don't make me relapse. Anyway, Bill, what you got?
That's a good word choice. That is a word choice I approve of. Okay, so I feel like we've done this before, haven't we, Dominique? I feel like last time we went through this, we spent years on the front lines of the Dak battle. We had to convince people he was better than Carson Wentz. Feels like a decade ago.
Gosh.
It's 2020. It's like 5 years ago, 4 years ago at this point. And yeah, here we are. 4 years later, kind of feels like nothing has changed outside of Carson Wentz. You know, like Dak is good. I think we like watching Dak from week to week. I know we didn't like Dak in the playoffs last year. He wasn't the only problem with that team, but that team was not excellent, to use a word Charlie put out there earlier, against the Packers. And now we're facing a conundrum where the Cowboys... Sorry.
No problem. We got edit power. Don't worry. We'll probably leave it in anyway to embarrass you, but if we want to cut it out, we can.
I'm really embarrassed that I coughed. That's the most embarrassing thing about me is I coughed this one time.
Domonique thinks he's so built different that he thinks he's never coughed.
No, it's not that I think I'd never cough. It's that I know what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to choke in the middle of a take.
I mean,
I'm not a
That's
take
why
choker.
you're on
you
first take
got to
and I'm
admit,
not.
there's some irony talking about Dak in the postseason and immediately choking on something.
So we're saying that Bill did that intentionally. I like it. Good job,
We
Bill.
are-
Way to weave
We are
it in,
leaving
man.
this in now. That's the thing. Oh, so we're facing this conundrum, right? The Cowboys are not good enough, seemingly, to win with Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and Micah Parsons, making about $48 million a year combined. How the hell are they going to be good enough to win in 3 contracts from now when Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and Micah Parsons are making $130 million per year? So I think we can start there, right? Like, should we be having the conversation not about Dak and how good he is, but on the broader like team building spectrum of like, can you do this with a team that hasn't been a championship caliber team and expect them to get better?
It seems like you're opening the door for a couple of different conversations. One is Cowboy specific, and the other one is just about quarterback pay. And I think we'll get to the quarterback pay one. The Cowboy specific conversation, and it's a little simpler and a little bit more straightforward, though it's still interesting, is how could they make the same mistake over and over again, where it seems like maybe it's not a mistake, and if it's not a mistake, I've been bending my brain in a bunch of different ways to try to figure out how it could be strategic, and the only one that I can come up with, and to be clear, the mistake is waiting to pay your quarterback and giving him more and more leverage in order to extract more value from your franchise, inevitably making it more difficult to then build around a quarterback and then ending up in a situation where you're going to fail. He's going to be good enough to get you to where you need to go, but you're going to fail in the playoffs and then say it's his fault. So that's the mistake that they keep making over and over again. The only argument I have for them potentially doing it intentionally is that Jerry Jones cares more about controlling the media cycle and increasing his franchise value than he does about winning a championship. And he knows that nothing sells more than a quarterback controversy, because nothing about this makes sense. There is no advantage they get from doing this, of franchising him the first time and not paying him, waiting till he has enough leverage to force a no trade, a no franchise clause, and then getting to the point where they're like, all right, we could have paid him before. No, we're going to wait for other quarterbacks to raise the ceiling on this. And I know there's potential that maybe Dak's side is hesitant to sign these contracts, but I just don't get how you could do this. A pretty well-run organization relative to everyone else. Like, they draft well, they've been competitive, they transition from one quarterback to another quarterback, things that most teams can't do. They're doing it, and they're consistently competitive, but they keep doing this part
And
wrong.
look at what else they've done, right? Like CeeDee Lamb, they could have signed last year, and they chose not to. And now he's in his 5th-year option. Now he's only a couple years away from unrestricted free agency. He has more leverage, and his market has gone up. And I'll tell you what, I would be surprised if they got a Micah Parsons deal done this year, which means Micah Parsons is going to be signing a deal in his 5th-year option once the cap has gone up, and once we've seen the non-quarterback market rise even further after Justin Jefferson's deal. So this is not just a Dak thing at this point. This is broken contain. This is now every star. That's a football term. I don't know if you guys know. Every star they have, they're not getting these deals done early, and it's costing them, like you said, significant leverage. And this is something I put in my column all the time. It sounds smart, but because I've said it like every single time, it's not really that interesting. NFL contracts are about leverage, not about skill. You need skill to have leverage, but these guys are getting, like, Dak did not play better in 2020 than he did in 2019. He got hurt in 2020. That was the year his ankle went the wrong way. And he still got paid after that year, even though the Cowboys were not willing to pay him that much before the ankle injury. Like, this is not about Dak's skill. It's not about Dak's level of play. It's not about seeing something from CeeDee Lamb or Micah Parsons that they haven't seen previously. These contracts are about leverage, and the Cowboys are handing their star players leverage and saying, hey, take us for whatever you want. Get that no trade, get that no tag clause, make us pay you everything you would want on a contract. So this is not just a Dak thing to me. It is a big 3 thing.
Well, we got to point out that Charlie sneezed.
I sneezed.
There's a couple guys on this show that are choking in the big moments. They can't manage to hold it together. For one program before the show started. I sat down, hiccup 3 times. Right or wrong, Charlie? 3 hiccups.
I don't
were.
even remember.
There
I was
were
like,
Okay,
hiccups.
we was taping. It was on
You
it.
were- Dominique was so cranky that I was trying to cheer him up by being
Wasn't
funny.
cranky. I was locked in. 3 hiccups. The show starts. Nary a hic or a up. You two just coughing and sneezing all about like we're not doing a professional production in here. Anyway,
Are you seven dwarfsing us on this show?
no, I'm letting. So who's gonna fall asleep?
The listeners.
I'm letting you potential narcoleptics know that we are doing a professional program here, and we can't win with coughs and sneezes. That's all. That's how you lose.
He's never sneezed, never coughed. Not once,
Felt
not
different.
ever.
Not when it was important.
Would signing Dak Prescott bring them closer to a Super Bowl?
It does not bring this Cowboys roster closer to a Super Bowl, but it brings the Cowboys roster closer to a Super Bowl than I believe they would without Dak Prescott. That's the conundrum.
That's what it always comes down to is like the relative scarcity of quarterbacks, and the alternative is always scarier than the quarterback that you have. There is not a number, it feels like, for a contract for a quarterback, and we see it reflected in how the contracts are changing. That scares off a team that has a quarterback that is above the line of like franchise starter quarterback. No one wants to go into that purgatory. Charlie, you know this better than anyone as a fan.
Disagree.
Of the Washington Commanders.
That's where I was going to go to, which is sorry, spoiler alert for people if you haven't finished Bill Barnwell's article at this point in the proceedings. Press pause on your podcast.
There you go.
Read the end of the article. Start the podcast again. Give it 5 stars. Rate and review. Share it on your social medias. And then get back to it.
Trying to make a comeback from your sneeze.
But you talked about the Commanders being the other side of the coin with Dak's twin, Kirk Cousins, who has had, same guy. The Commanders chose not to pay him, and he walked, and they have been on an odyssey for 7 years until they ended up with Jaden Daniels, the number 2 pick.
Which does not mean that their odyssey is over,
No,
by the way.
no, it could be longer.
This is just Sisyphus being like, "Oh, I think I see the top of the mountain. I think we're good."
Oh, we're going into mythology now. I got it.
But what I'll say is my opinion as a fan, and I think I speak for a lot of Commanders fans, it's okay. We're okay with Kirk Cousins leaving. We're okay with the odyssey we went on, because being in that purgatory, it's like, did this materially change anything for us? Maybe we would have been 9. Maybe we would have been 9-7 a couple times.
It's just a lie.
No, it's not.
That's just a lie. Like, you think that you would have rather spend the last, 10 years as a team that was competitive and realistically a Super Bowl contender, which is what the Cowboys have been, or you spend it being like kind of bad. They're just lying.
It depends if you are honest with yourself about what a Super Bowl contender is.
I also want to point out, by the way, like there was a real smooth process there for Charlie going, Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, basically the same. Just want to point out, Dak Prescott was literally number 2 in MVP voting last season.
Yeah.
Kirk Cousins, to my knowledge, has not been in the top 10 for MVP voting at any point during his career.
This is a comparison that people like to do to get me upset, and I just ignore it and let them have it, because there's some things that you can't argue with people about. Like, Dak Prescott is obviously better than Kirk Cousins, but whatever. It doesn't matter. You can have that argument if you want. I think that you're lying about the idea that you'd rather be like above average and have real Super Bowl expectations every year as a fan. Do you think that would have been less fun?
In Washington, I would have had no Super Bowl aspirations if Kirk Cousins had been my quarterback.
Okay. Now, this is a ridiculous tangent to go off on. We can get back to the conversation.
You want me to be a delusional fan who thinks that because I have Dak Prescott or Kirk Cousins, I think I can win the Super Bowl.
I saw Joe Flacco win a Super Bowl. It's possible.
Yeah, like it's just asinine, that the point that he's trying to make. You would rather have
rookie deal though.
So all right, here we go. This is, Eli Manning did it, not on a rookie deal. Like, it can be done anyway. Brush all that to the side. The Broncos won with Peyton Manning, who was worse than all of them at that point. Brush it all to the side.
He was like Magneto.
I understand his brain could not help the fact that whatever. I understand if you say, I'd give up 10 years of quality football.
He's compared someone to Peyton Manning.
I'd give up 10 years of quality football if I was guaranteed at the end to get a franchise-changing awesome quarterback. You're saying I'd give up 10 years of quality.
You're already writing off Jaden Daniels.
I'm not. I'm writing him in. I'm saying that if he turns out to be great, then your reason makes sense. But you're saying, nah, I'll just suck. And then there's no promise at the end. It just is dumb.
No, I'm just saying it didn't hurt me.
It did hurt you. You've been a miserable fan. Okay, this is a.
Oh, you don't think I was miserable even when we had Kirk Cousins? Of course I was.
Yeah, I think Kirk Cousins. You were miserable then too, but you had promise. You were excited. You had things that you believed in. I think if you wouldn't take the Cowboys run. You wouldn't take the Cowboys run that they've had.
Of course I would.
That's all I'm saying.
I really find myself
That's all I'm saying.
like fluctuating back and forth in who I want to make fun of. Like, do I want to make fun of Charlie for not? I know Charlie said you like that at a bar at some point in Washington 7 years ago. But like when Domonique said
I was an RG3 guy. No
the
pressure.
Cowboys run like they just were on a dynasty when they won like 2 playoff games in 7 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I'm not gonna let you two do this.
I'm really struggling.
I'm
I
not
don't
gonna
know
let
who
you
to
two
pick
do
on
this.
here. I feel like this is tough.
Okay, who's had a better decade? The Cowboys.
I thought you were going to say Domonique or Charlie had a better team.
Oh yeah, no, Charlie's had the
That's
best
fair.
decade for sure. This is dumb.
You're right.
This is a waste of time because it's so obvious that
You're
I'm
right, Domonique. The Cowboys are better, but again, it's that question of do we already know what the Cowboys are? Like with Kirk Cousins, maybe you could have made the case for that first contract when he was getting franchised for the first time, maybe even the second time. Okay, maybe Kirk Cousins is going to grow. He's in his 20s. Like Dak is now, we've seen him through an entire second contract. We've seen him on a franchise tag. We've seen him on his rookie deal. And I think Dak is a really good quarterback. But again, I think there's that like disconnect there of, yes, Dak is a valuable player and good for the Cowboys and better than the alternative, but can they really get any further than they have with their star players getting more expensive? And that's what I guess I want to ask this question to you guys. I feel like this is the way I want to talk about this problem because I think this is more interesting than talking about whether the Kirk Cousins Commanders would have been good or not.
Agreed.
If you were going to get rid of one of these guys, if it's Dak at $60 million a year, CeeDee Lamb at $35 million a year, and Micah Parsons at $35 million a year, if you think you have to, spend some of that money elsewhere, and you have to get rid of one of these guys to help, fill out a roster around 2 of those 3 stars, which one are you getting rid of?
Good question. Why don't you answer it? Because I don't know. I haven't given that any thought. I think
You didn't think about that at all in prepping for this, of how you pick between them?
no.
Prep.
Didn't cross my mind once. Prepping was reading Bill's article, and that was the prepping for it. And Bill didn't put that in the article, so I didn't
Charlie,
think it. So
what's your answer? Who do you think?
The way I thought about it, there's one
Bill's
that
really
stands
trying
out.
not to answer this question.
There's one that stands out. You're keeping Parsons.
Yes, I agree.
In my opinion. Premium position. I think he's better compared to his peers than the other 2 are in the league. Then you get to CeeDee and Dak. Where do I think you would get the most return in theory with the trade? Probably Dak Prescott. We just saw the corpse of Russell Wilson be traded for so much, even though we thought he was pretty good his last year in Seattle.
Dak has no
you've made it a
Dak has
trade.
no trade clause. So it's either you lose Dak for nothing, or I guess you trade CeeDee Lamb.
You don't think you get traded to a contender?
He's cheating. The question was, which one can you do without? Not who can you trade. Assuming that you're going to let somebody walk.
Yeah.
Make the hard decision.
I'd see you, Dak. Is that what you want me to say?
Yeah, so I want you to say.
I'd honestly, I'd probably say see you to CD. I think there's so many good receivers that come into the league, and he's excellent. But the $35 million a year at a price like Justin Jefferson, that's probably the one I can't live with, and I think I can replace as much of the production as possible.
Good answer.
But the concept of a trade, Dak is a really intriguing trade candidate because he is still very good in what we've seen from quarterback trades in the past couple of years.
Yeah, it'd be nice if he could do it,
Fair.
but he can't because Dak has all the leverage because he got a no trade clause.
I mean, I think can we spin it to the general conversation about compensation?
You want the big quarterback?
Yeah, because I think the Dak conversation specifically, Bill has made it more interesting, but I think it's obvious to me that they're going to pay him. They have to pay him. I think there are some other questions that are a little bit more difficult. And I could be wrong. This could all blow up in my face at some point, but given their history and given the leverage situation, it seems like it's going to happen.
Well, we're going to be doing this show in 2028 when he's down 35-0 in the first quarter against Jordan Love again. And we're like, they got to pay him another time. 4th time in a row. We got to pay Dak.
So narrow-minded.
So by the way, the last thing I'll say about Dak before we move on is it's interesting the timing of how they messed it up, which is a point you said that they let the market get set. everyone has gotten paid already, whether it's the Burrows, the Herberts, the Mahomes, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not like this is even going to be a deal that in 4 years looks like it's cheap comparatively. He is the last of this whole group.
Yeah.
Where it's going to be the big top contract for several years
And
in the NFL.
the other thing I want to say is Domonique alluded to this earlier, this idea that Dak's representation might not want to sign a contract early. Well, that's why you're Jerry Jones. That's why you have to be a great owner, a great negotiator, convinces the other side, convinces the quarterback, convinces his agent that you want to get a deal done earlier rather than later. Yes, any player rep could be like, hey, wait until the last possible second to get a deal done. Dak doesn't need the money at this point. You want to have to convince Dak to get this deal done at the first opportunity, to get it done last year before Burrow, Herbert, Hurts all sign their extensions. That's your job. Like, anybody could sit there and wait until the last possible second and just hand Dak a blank check. That's what's going to happen. It doesn't make. I think that's a failure on Jerry Jones's part, without alluding to whatever Dak and Dak's camp wants to have happen.
We're not the only ones who recognize that quarterback play makes for a pretty challenging roster construction situation. There have been some ideas floated on how to address quarterback play. I think those ideas are crazy, but Charlie, can you set us up, please?
Yeah, this is Tom Pelissero is on the Rich Eisen show and talked about rumblings, ideas. You don't want quarterback salaries. He said you don't want them to take up too much of the cap, a certain percent of the salary cap. This isn't the NBA where, you can pay someone a 30-year cap. That guy's going to guarantee you're going to be really good if it's LeBron James, if it's, Stephen Curry, Nikola Jokic, et cetera, et cetera. He proposed the idea of things he's heard of an NBA model, a max percentage, benchmarks for quarterbacks, or a separate salary cap for quarterback salaries, separate from the number you get for the rest of your other 52 guys on the roster, 51, I guess, if they're backups. And so what I want to ask you guys is, should quarterbacks have a separate salary cap?
This does not fix the problem that they say that they're having, which is why I'm confused at why it's been proposed as a potential solution. So first of all, that's something that should be collectively bargained. So we'll put aside the fact that it's a potential for collusion. But
for the record, it says it hasn't gained traction in the owners to be proposed. It's just an idea that had been floated.
Good,
I'm not saying they haven't skirted the bargaining of it.
No, I'm good with that. I think it should not, because have you watched the NBA? Like, the problem with the NBA is exactly what happens is that you end up, and again, I'll lean on Charlie's fandom, is your best player is going to get a max deal. And if you are paying Bradley Beal the same amount as you are paying, I don't know, Steph Curry or Kevin Durant or LeBron James, then the resources are even. And then the player who is better is obviously going to outplay the players who are not good because you have the same amount of money. So, like, I think it plays to the advantage of a team who has one of the 5 really, really difference-making quarterbacks. I think that exacerbates the problem. It does not solve it. Maybe it caps the quarterback's pay, but it does not make it so that you are in that quarterback purgatory where you have a quarterback that's not quite great, but just good. Right, Bill?
And you know what? If you don't want to pay a quarterback a 30-year salary cap, don't do it. Spend money elsewhere. But that's an opportunity. That's a thing you can arbitrage if you're a good owner, if you believe that you have the right infrastructure around you. If everyone is spending too much money on quarterbacks, spend your money on wide receivers, spend it on tight ends, spend it on offensive linemen, and take a quarterback with the final pick of the NFL draft who you can turn into a guy as good as Dak Prescott. Like, that is to squeeze quarterbacks into a bucket and say, okay, this is our max deal. Everyone else has to figure this out. Like Domonique said, it's going to create different kinds of inequities, and then it doesn't solve any problem.
One thing that I recognize from, like, my work in unions with basketball and football is that rather than the owners and the management on the other side, rather than them actually, like, stepping up, taking a deep breath, and making a tough decision, they would like to institute rules that keep them from having to address the issues. So, like what Bill said, if you don't like what's happening in the quarterback market, don't participate in the quarterback market. Like, that tends to be the case where advantages are found, is the person or the entity that has the confidence to find an opportunity where there isn't one. Like, that's essentially the birth of like the modern analytics movement, is you recognize that you can't compete the way that they compete. So you find another way to compete. If you can't find a quarterback like they found, then you find another way to compete. And maybe that means that you don't keep looking for a great quarterback. So rather than actually do that, they want to create some way to keep them from having to like have some courage and bravery. And this is like, obviously, I love professional sports. We watch them. I've made money from it. It's great. But this is one of the American professional sports. This is one of the issues of this like cartel model, is that all the teams are protected financially. So no one has the fortitude to try to make any risk. And you see it in college sports where the teams aren't protected. So sometimes the schemes are a little bit more on the edge because they have distinct disadvantages that they cannot just compensate for. So that's a thing that happens. I know Bill, someone who appreciates more international sports than I do, recognizes that there are some drawbacks of doing it a different way, but we have to acknowledge that there are drawbacks of the way that we do it.
Question. And I want to throw this out there. You know, I know that this has not been official. It hasn't been brought to a vote. Which ownership group do we think came up with this to try and solve their problems? I'm feeling Giants for some reason.
That makes sense. I mean, but it doesn't help them though. It's not a real solution. You know what the real solution is?
Yeah, let's solution this.
The real solution, and it might be my solution to every problem, is
I do too.
Let's guess. Let's start with Bill. What do you think
abolish the draft.
Get rid of the salary cap. Uncap sport.
Boom. I like them both. I was going to go with the salary cap is the actual issue here, and we could meet halfway. And if you want to take the quarterbacks out of the salary cap, then I actually think that addresses the problem. If you want to take, and I think that creates another problem for the union that the union would have to deal with, is further separating the quarterbacks, the most powerful and most important players, further separating them from the union membership, which is a challenge always because the quarterbacks are football players, but they exist in a different world. And sometimes they are the biggest proponents on the league side when we're in negotiations, because the quarterbacks kind of feel like they're above us and they're kind of treated like they're above us. So they kind of do not, the issues that upset the players don't always resonate with them. But that does actually solve the percentage of the cap problem. Like, you can pay them $100 million a year, but it doesn't affect your cap. And so that's one solution. Abolishing the draft is another great solution. Then you are not incentivized to be crappy. Good players come to you because you're good. What? Why are you rolling your eyes?
I agree with you. But the other thing I would say...
okay, thank you.
I love the draft. It's so fun to watch.
It's so stupid. It's fun to watch, but we can...
I love it.
But the problem is, if it's... I don't think that you eliminate the excitement of the night.
3 days of highlights.
Listen, I'm fine with that. The draft, I get it. It's a fun event. You just flip it, and rather than you build up to big decisions, is you have players ranked, and you build up to the player's big decision. And you have a bunch of fan bases out there like, oh, I hope he picks me. And then the guy gets up there on the microphone, which creates another storyline going forward, is he snubbed this team. He gets up on the microphone and says, you know who I select? I select the Washington Commanders.
This is college football signing day.
No one's ever
put the three hats in front of you.
Boom.
And then you just pick the hat.
And it's a lot of fun. And then they can negotiate the contracts behind closed doors. You can figure out, and then you can actually have a different strategy. Like, you know what? We're going to win with having a shutdown secondary. We're going to spend all our money, rather than dropping it on a quarterback, we're going to spend all our money on the three best corners this year. Guess what? We are the steel curtain going forward.
I got a question about the actual report that we had from Pelissero of how it would work in theory. If there was a max salary and he talked about it not just being static, like the percentage would move as the cap went up. So it's not like an NBA thing where you sign someone for a max deal, the cap goes up, that deal ends up being a bargain. It just moves with it. Do you think that would have teams be more or less cautious signing these quarterbacks to deals? Because objectively, it's like, it's going to sound like I'm picking on him, but like if Patrick Mahomes is being paid a certain amount of money and you're running a team, it's like, are we going to spend that amount of money, that max amount of the percentages on Tua to have him be paid the same percentage as Mahomes? You're like, you know what? If we do that, we're going to lose. Like, we need to value engineer somewhere else. Or is it just that's the new thing? Everyone gets that percentage if you're a
That's
starting
already
quarterback.
happening. like Tua's already going to get more than Patrick. It doesn't change anything with having a max deal. Just the actual number is different, and we're already seeing teams are not afraid to make that move, right? They're not afraid to pay Trevor Lawrence more than Patrick Mahomes.
It's just gonna be dependent on percentages rather than actual dollars. The same phenomenon is gonna happen because the value of the quarterback is not measured by his output as much as it's measured by the scarcity of the player or that position. So like Patrick Mahomes is gonna have just as much leverage as Tua, frankly. Like as crazy as that sounds, their leverage is gonna be very similar in the situation. I agree that it's stupid. So why don't the people who make the decisions, and this is where like it feels like there's a moral hazard situation with people in front offices where it's like, all right, do I want to take this risk and blow my whole career and potentially blow my whole career by letting a good quarterback walk away? Or do I want to go ahead and pay this quarterback and let everyone gather around and say, you know why we stink? Because the quarterback is getting paid this much and we can't fill out around him, but he's not good enough to make a difference. Like, it's obvious the incentives in that situation make it so that the right thing to do is to go ahead and pay that scapegoat a whole bunch of money and tell yourself that you are paying him for the assault that he is going to receive for receiving that money and not necessarily for the ability of him to produce on the field.
Also, on top of all this, is this even a problem to begin with? Like, is anybody watching the NFL and thinking, you know who's paid too much? Patrick Mahomes. We got to cap him. We can't let him get too much money. Like, Patrick Mahomes would get $150 million a year on the open market. Like, we don't, this is not a problem that we actually have in the NFL. There's so many bigger problems that we could solve.
And I think that this is, again, taking the quarterbacks out of the cap. I think that does actually lead to people saying it's going to be a lot harder for a quarterback to ask for Patrick Mahomes money at that point.
There is a problem of this that I do think is interesting. Like, we look at this and there are positions and players who can't really get paid. And part of that is just because of percentages of the cap, because you don't think that could be fixed if the quarterbacks were at a different salary cap or at a max percentage. Like, running backs don't get paid unless you're like so exceptional. Tight ends are underpaid compared to receivers or so-and-so. Like, linebackers now aren't being paid the way that edge rushers are. Is there not a way that if certain positions can't take up that much of the cap percentage-wise, that won't, help team building, diversity of scheme, more guys can get paid?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't anticipate that the NFL would, raise the cap by... Like, I don't think the NFL would take whatever the cap is now, $250 million. I don't think they would be like, oh, quarterbacks go to the side, but the rest of the roster is getting $250 million. And I think if they did, I think they would just apportion it the way they are now. I think, we've seen the money that would typically go to running backs in years past go to guards and go to right tackles. I think those guys would just get more than they would otherwise. I don't think it changes the fundamental, issue with running backs where there's just more running backs to go around than opportunities for those backs to play well. I think if anything, having quarterbacks on the cap now encourages you to be more creative. It encourages you to go out and get a rookie quarterback, given how expensive quarterbacks are on the cap. And if you do that, then you can afford an expensive running back. You can afford an expensive tight end. I think that that should incentivize paying running backs, paying these undervalued positions more than sort of putting the quarterbacks to the side.
I think there are some basic elements of economics and markets that exist. And no matter how much the most powerful people are in our society or in this league try to use rules to gerrymander it, you're not going to be able to eliminate those particular incentives. So, like, the supply and demand is not going to change just because you take the quarterbacks out. It'll then just be the player or the group of players that is the next most valuable. Their contracts will then just explode. There's no elegant way, I think, to fix it so that the money is more dispersed. What you're trying to do is create value for players or create a better market for players who can't on their own generate that value because their impact on the game and the prevalence of other players of similar value is what it is. So, like,
the best thing you can
eliminate
do,
the salary cap.
Eliminate the cap. At the very least, increase the rookie scale. That's the one thing you can do where players can have more money as they enter the league, and without independent of position, because the scale's the same no matter what position you play if you get drafted. I mean, again, like there's so many bigger problems facing the NFL than what quarterbacks are getting paid. Like that is the market found that those guys are worth that much money, and GMs are too afraid to plan otherwise. And we're going to have a conversation in a couple weeks. I'm going to come back on the show. I know it. We're going to talk about Brock Purdy. That column is coming. The people are going to be mad. But like, if you're really that pissed about quarterback money, pay the other guys, pay the running back, pay the tight end, and make it work otherwise. But GMs, coaches are not typically inclined to do that.
Honestly, this is something that I sincerely believe. I don't know if I was in position to make these decisions, if I would have the guts to do it. But I think that...
Yes, do it. Do it, Domonique.
I think that there is a class of quarterbacks that exists that's like dropped in any situation, they will have success. I think the vast majority of the quarterbacks in the league, including some of them that we think are incredibly successful, are a result of being in a good situation, in a good organization. And I think that there are a number of quarterbacks that we have deemed to be busts that fell into situations and organizations. And I think that there are teams that are run well and manage to stay competitive. I always think about the Ravens in this case. Like the Ravens have not had an illustrious history of good quarterbacks, but they had an organization that lifted quarterbacks and protected quarterbacks. I think that that is the thing. And we're running around, and a lot of these teams and general managers are living their lives as if they can find the guy. Yes, there are 4 or 5 guys in the league that are like this, and maybe one's entering the draft. But that to me seems like an absurd strategy. A much better strategy is to try to make a landing spot and cycle these quarterbacks through until you find one that can spark. And that also means that you have to be comfortable when it comes time to be like, all right, we're going to franchise tag this man twice and then let him ride. And in this whole time, we'll be drafting quarterbacks, trying to find the next one to make it work. Hopefully we hit on one who's super special. But if not, if we draft a quarterback every year, bring in some free agents every year, we should be able to find someone that we're comfortable handing this over to when it's time to do it. Like, it seems like an obvious strategy that no one seemed to be willing to try.
We're going to trade that quarterback at the end of his rookie deal to a team that needs a quarterback, get a really high pick for him, and use that pick on a quarterback we love in the draft to be the next guy. That is the other way.
And the best part about that strategy is you are not abandoning the strategy of maybe we can find Jesus. Like, you're still doing it.
You don't have to trade Mahomes if you draft him.
And if you do, you're damn right. If you catch him at number 10, cool. Thank you. Yeah. And now we'll sign them and keep it moving.
Now, when you say quarterbacks who have fallen into terrible situations, bad organizations, to bring it full circle, you mean Trey Lance and the San Francisco 49ers, right? Because Trey Lance is going to be great when he takes over for Dak.
No. No. There are some quarterbacks who just are not good. And I'm not willing to say that about Trey Lance, but I really feel like maybe it's true about Trey Lance.
Dude, have some guts. You're not really willing to say that.
No, just because you haven't seen him play enough. And it's like, I don't know.
God, this is the most tepid take ever. I'm not willing to say that Trey Lance might not be good if he couldn't play for the 49ers.
I think that there are some
from
things.
Domonique's end?
No, it's absolutely not a hiccup. It's just I didn't want to have a whole nuanced conversation about Trey Lance at the end of this show.
This is how GMs end up paying Tua Tagovailoa $50 million a year because
they're too tired to talk about Trey Lance.
What if he's good somewhere else? What if he's great?
That's not the point. The point is that Trey Lance could be good somewhere else. I think that there are specific things about the way that Kyle Shanahan coaches quarterbacks that does not optimize for what Trey Lance does well. Maybe that means that Trey Lance could have success elsewhere. It does not mean that he sucks. We haven't seen him play enough to say that he sucks. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, he needs more all-pros.
This is just Charlie trying to be a troll. No, succeeding at being a troll. He does these things throughout the course of the show, and I've gotten good at detecting them and avoiding them. But this one, I let grab me.
Is like a hockey game. It's like Charlie, the play ends, and Charlie jabs you with his stick when the ref's not looking.
That's it. And skates away like
just waiting for you to turn around.
But I got to stay focused on the puck. We got to win this game.
Are you saying that you think more GMs should just let quarterbacks walk?
Yeah.
It just seems to run counter to the first question we talked about.
No, I don't think that he falls in that category.
So he's one of the 4 or 5 quarterbacks that you build around. Got it.
No, I think that this team is at a point where they have committed themselves to Dak Prescott. But go right ahead. Let him walk. If you demonstrated that you believe that you could do something better, that's the big issue with the Cowboys is they don't seem to be planning for anything else.
Yeah.
Like, that's the big issue. And they also aren't aggressively pursuing this strategy. That's the big issue for the Cowboys. They find themselves in the middle.
Let me ask you, Domonique, and let me ask you, Charlie, because I don't want to have to answer this question. What's the line for you? What is the line for you where it goes from, I feel totally confident about signing this guy, to I might think about letting them walk if I have to pay him $60 million a year? Because clearly Dak is not on that line for Domonique. I actually agree with him. But where does that line come for you? Is it Trevor Lawrence? Is it Justin Herbert?
Lawrence is right on that line.
Might be Lawrence, huh?
The tough thing about that question to me is that it requires self-awareness that I don't think the teams have, because I think the line is contingent upon how good I think our organization is going to be at finding someone else. So, like, if I've determined that Trevor Lawrence is slightly above average in large part because of Trevor Lawrence, then I'm like, no, we signing this. If I determine that we have lifted Trevor Lawrence to a point and we could be fine elsewhere, then I'm like, all right, we have to move on from him. Trevor Lawrence, to me, feels like a player that you would not move on from.
What about Jared Goff?
See, that's the one. That's the one that comes to mind, is like...
Also a Dak.
Yeah.
He's so let me... The guys who are unassailable. You've got Mahomes. You've got Allen. You've got Lamar. You've got Burrow. You've got Stroud. You've got Herbert. In very short spurts... Presumably, like, if you could sign him for a 1-year deal, you'd want Stafford. I'm sorry, now old guys.
I got you. You skipped over Jordan Love.
Oh, Jordan Love,
like,
definitely.
He's had one season, but it's enough.
Superstar.
Yeah.
Love him. Pay him anything he wants. Give that man his money. I don't know if I could rank the rookies, but then it's like Trevor Lawrence and Kyler Murray and Dak Prescott and Jared Goff and Kirk Cousins, and I don't know about that. Jim, doesn't seem like you're winning the Super Bowl with that, Jim.
I cannot believe we're putting Dak in that group of people. Dak and Kyler? Come on.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I would move Dak into the you definitely pay him.
Gino, too. Gino's there with them.
Sure.
I'd move Dak into the definitely paid situation. So I
forgot Jalen Hurts. He's also better than Dak.
Okay, if you say so.
That is the official opinion of the Domonique Foxworth Show, I believe, actually. I think a majority of Domonique Foxworth Show hosts would concur on this topic.
No, I don't. Yeah,
Jalen's also he's in that same. He's actually in that same group. I was just that was me actually just jabbing with the hockey stick.
The thing about the Jalen Hurts situation is, I do feel like Jalen Hurts is benefiting from being in a situation that is tailored to him. I don't think that, but I also
Dak, notably always in bad situations.
I didn't say that. What is it? You didn't even wait till I finished talking before you started jabbing me with the stick. At least wait for me to land the plane before you jab me with the stick. I'm done with you. It's ridiculous. I forgot what I was saying. Jalen Hurts, I think, is harder to replace. So I think that's also, he's hard to replace because they've built a system that I think is certainly based around the skills that he has. Dak is slightly different. He was in a good situation. They shifted to putting a lot more pressure on him, and they got better. And the reason why they fell short in a lot of those, or in some of those playoffs games, were not a result of Dak Prescott coming up short. I think some of it was a result of their defense not being able to stop anybody. The result of Aaron Rodgers throwing that ridiculous pass. I guess that was before they shifted the offense to being Dak focused. But the point is, Dak is better than you want to give him credit for.
Okay, how about this?
Ran out the clock.
We can combine all this here. We're going to have a separate quarterback system. You get paid separately. But if you screw up, you don't get to have the quarterback cap. So, like, if you trade, like, 2 first-round picks for Bryce Young, and Bryce Young is terrible, well, guess what, David Tepper? You don't get the quarterback cap. You got to fix this on your main cap, get a guy who's actually good, and then you can get access to the quarterback cap. It has to be something you have to earn the right to get to, as opposed to paying Daniel Jones $40 million a year.
Well, I am fine with switching up the NFL system in a way that is truly more meritocratic, in that you actually have to be good to get something, whereas now it's like the suckier you are, the
Wow.
better chance you got.
Participation trophy, Domonique Foxworth coming out here.
That's it. No, I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying right now. Yeah.
You're decrying participation trophy. I'm saying participation trophy troll Domonique Foxworth, I should say.
You're damn right. Be good, like this show. All right. Anyway, thank you, Bill Barnwell, for the great work that you always do, and thank you for joining us here. Charlie Kravitz, you are the man. I appreciate all your jabs. Good jabs. Good jabs. You know what people like in hockey? A fight. So somebody's got to do the jabbing to make it happen. Thank you to all the great producers, Serafina, Megan, Brian, Tez. I love you, Podville. We out.
This is the Domonique Foxworth Show.